Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a set of sources, ancient prophetic and gospel texts that honestly, they deliver one of the most powerful and frankly jarring psychological journeys you could take. We're diving into Isaiah 41, Psalm 145, and Matthew 11. Our mission today is pretty simple: to get a quick handle on the powerful, sometimes paradoxical message in these readings. It's a message that just flips your identity on its head and then demands a really radical response.
And that contrast is immediate. That's what makes these texts so vital. They promise ultimate just help and, world-altering transformation. But they start by demanding just absolute humility.
Right.
They really pull no punches about where we start. And that's the first shock for you, the listener.
It is. It's the ultimate tension right out of the gate. I mean, we're talking about massive promises, cosmic help, geological transformation. But the text starts by addressing its audience in the most self-effacing language you could imagine.
It really is.
The source material actually calls you, the audience, "O worm Jacob, O maggot Israel."
Yeah. It's designed to stop you in your tracks. I mean, when we hear those words, worm, maggot, we are being identified as a creature of absolute lowliness.
Total powerlessness.
Exactly. Powerlessness, vulnerability. Low maggot is something that is just easily crushed, unnoticed, and really focused entirely on its own tiny, immediate survival.
It's the absolute opposite of strength. If the text had started, "O mighty hero Jacob," what follows would make perfect sense. But starting with the identity of a maggot, it sets up this philosophical collision.
And that's our core question for you today. How do we reconcile this intense, almost terrifying humility with the radical, world-changing power that is promised in the very next breath? If you are identified as a maggot, what exactly is that promise of power, and what active response does it demand from you to claim it?
We have to find out. Let's jump right into Isaiah 41 because it doesn't leave us wallowing in that identity for long.
Let's unpack this shift in destiny.
So despite that jarring opening, the text immediately pivots to comfort. And it's deeply intimate comfort. It's not some distant proclamation. It feels personal.
Very personal.
The text says, "I am the Lord your God who grasp your right hand. Fear not, I will help you." And this is an unmistakable promise given explicitly to the one who is just called a worm and a maggot.
And what's essential here is the timing. This promise of help is not conditional on Jacob first becoming something great. The help is given while Jacob is still a maggot.
Okay, so the state of being a maggot is the prerequisite, almost.
In a way, yes. But the fascinating part is that the divine assurance doesn't just promise protection. It promises a violent, comprehensive transformation of the individual's entire purpose.
So tell us about that shift. What does the maggot become?
You're a worm one moment, utterly fragile, but then the source promises, "Behold, I will make of you a threshing sledge, sharp, new, and double-edged."
Wow.
I mean, talk about a spectacular, almost unbelievable change in identity.
A threshing sledge. For listeners who might not be familiar with ancient agriculture, this isn't some small hand tool, right?
Not at all.
It's a massive, heavy wooden apparatus, often sled-shaped, pulled over grain to separate the kernels from the chaff. And it was usually studded with sharp stones or iron teeth on the bottom to just tear through everything.
Exactly. It's an instrument of massive force, capable of reducing solid material to dust. And the text even specifies its condition: sharp, new, and double-edged. It is optimized for maximum destructive efficiency.
That is a complete reversal of the maggot's nature.
A total 180.
So what is the mandate for this newly empowered threshing sledge? What's it supposed to do?
Its purpose is equally monumental. It goes way beyond separating grain. The text says the new destiny is to thresh the mountains and crush them to make the hills like chaff.
So geological warfare.
That's a perfect way to put it. This implies that the obstacles facing the maggot, the things that felt like immovable mountains, are now going to be reduced to light, worthless dust, just carried away by the wind.
So we move from being this vulnerable object that can be crushed to an active crushing machine. This isn't passive salvation where the worm is just sheltered from the mountain. The worm is given the capacity to destroy the mountain. And that requires a tremendous amount of spiritual boldness.
This is so crucial. This promise is not about escaping reality. It's about engaging reality with radical power. The result is total victory, and the individual shall rejoice in the Lord. And if you think the transformation stops there with the person, the text shows the divine action is also happening in the world around them.
Right. I found the ecological details so surprising. The help is extended beyond just the individual to the afflicted and the needy who are, seeking water in vain.
The comprehensive reversal of scarcity and hardship. The divine intervention is detailed on a monumental scale, specifically designed to help those who are desperately struggling. The source material just paints this picture of a completely transformed landscape for their benefit.
And the specifics are incredible. The reading says, "I will open up rivers on the bare heights and fountains in the broad valleys. I will turn the desert into a marshland and the dry ground into springs of water." I mean, that's hydrological engineering driven by divine will.
And you notice the attention to detail, which proves just how meticulous this promise is. Even the flora is specified. It's a complete reforestation of the wasteland.
Yeah, it lists 7 distinct species: the cedar, acacia, myrtle, and olive, then the cypress, together with the plane tree and the pine.
Why 7 specific trees? It speaks to intention, to completeness, to permanent provision. You're turning barrenness into a thriving, fragrant ecosystem. It's not just a quick shower, it's establishing a sustainable environment where life can flourish.
So if we connect all this incredible power back to the ultimate purpose given in the text, it's all about visibility and understanding, right?
Exactly. All of these acts, the person transformation into a sledge, the ecological shift, are done so that all may see and know, observe and understand that the hand of the Lord has done this.
So the key takeaway here is powerful. Intense humility is the starting point, but the destination is active, visible, mountain-crushing power. But let's be honest, that much destructive power, even metaphorically, is terrifying unless it is anchored in something reliable.
Precisely. If we're suddenly given the tools to crush mountains, we need to know the character of the one who gave us the tools. Otherwise, that power could easily be used arbitrarily or unjustly.
Which is why the material immediately shifts our focus from the action to the actor.
Right, and this takes us directly to Psalm 145, which provides the necessary foundation for believing these radical promises. It underpins the entire operation.
Okay, so what's the bedrock here?
The repeated refrain in the psalm is the bedrock of trust you need to accept the Isaiah promise. We need assurance that the king granting this power is benevolent, and the text provides it. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness.
So the one with all the power is defined by patience and compassion.
Expansive compassion. And the psalm makes sure we know that this kindness isn't limited to a select few. The text is universal, stating clearly that the Lord is good to all and compassionate toward all his works.
It's a universal goodness, then. It covers the entire sweep of creation, all of humanity.
But it speaks directly to the scope of this dominion. The faithful are called to discourse of the glory of your kingdom and speak of your might, and to make known to men your might. It's a kingdom that is meant to be recognized and celebrated.
And the power promised in Isaiah is worth celebrating because the kingdom itself is eternal. The source says your kingdom is a kingdom for all ages, and your dominion endures through all generations. It's not fleeting.
It's not fleeting. It's an eternal reality established by a merciful king. And that persistence is key. It sets up an expectation of permanent justice and fulfillment, which then naturally leads to the prayer, the Alleluia, linking this expectation back to the need for action.
The yearning for completion.
Exactly. Let the clouds rain down the just one and the earth bring forth a savior.
Which is the perfect transition, because now we take this established expectation of mercy and eternal dominion, and we introduce the paradox that makes the whole structure actionable. That is the challenging statement in Matthew 11, specifically around John the Baptist.
And here's where the tension from the beginning, that shift from worm to crusher, it comes back with the new urgency. We have to grapple with the status of John the Baptist.
John is, he's arguably the greatest figure in the story of preparation, the voice crying in the wilderness.
And the paradox begins with acknowledging his unparalleled greatness. Jesus declares that among those born of women, there has been none greater than John the Baptist.
His greatest ever.
Our sources suggest this greatness comes from his profound humility, his humble readiness to prepare hearts for the Messiah. He was the absolute pinnacle of the prophetic era, the perfect preparer.
Okay, the best to ever do it. Yet the text immediately pivots to the most puzzling, most challenging statement. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Let's just pause there. Because this is the knowledge you, the listener, need to unlock.
If the greatest prophet who ever lived is less than the least person who is in the kingdom, what is the revolutionary difference between preparing for it and actually participating in it? It's the difference between standing at the threshold and walking through the door. John was the voice announcing the king was coming. He was the ultimate preparation for the wedding feast. But the least person in the kingdom is now experiencing the realized presence, the new reality.
They have something John could only point to.
Exactly. They possess something he could only point toward. This is the radical power shift. Being in the kingdom structure, post-fulfillment, supersedes even the most perfect preparatory role.
And this is crucial because it connects directly to the required behavior. And it leads us to the most striking and challenging statement in this whole deep dive, the discussion of violence.
The source material uses incredibly forceful language here. It states, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent are taking it by force."
Okay, now we have a major internal conflict. We just established in Psalm 145 that the king is gracious and merciful and slow to anger. How do we reconcile that gentle character with the fact that his kingdom suffers violence and the path to entry is described as being taken by force?
This is the exact tension we need to hold. We have to understand that this force is not physical aggression or, malicious violence. It's spiritual intensity.
Spiritual intensity.
Yes. If you look at the language used in the original text, it implies urgency, zealous application, and determined action.
Yeah.
The kingdom demands people who are not passive, but who actively press into this new reality.
That sounds exactly like the maggot that was turned into a sharp, new, double-edged threshing sledge.
Go on.
It's an aggressive, dynamic instrument designed for crushing obstacles, not for waiting patiently. The text is linking the internal spiritual reality, the force needed for entry, with the external tool given for action.
We have to hold those two images together. The king is benevolent and merciful, yet his kingdom is entered through a determined, forceful act of will. The implication is that this force is the aggressive, relentless pursuit of spiritual transformation, actively overcoming internal and external resistance.
Before we move to application, we have to note that the source ensures the prophetic thread is tight. John is explicitly identified as Elijah, if you are willing to accept it.
And that acceptance leads directly to the call to attention. Whoever has ears ought to hear. This is the mandate, the paradox, the challenge of spiritual violence. It cannot be ignored. It demands a conscious response.
So what does this all mean for us today? We've gone from being a worm to a mountain-crushing sledge, and we've realized that the kingdom of this gracious God requires a kind of spiritual force. What is the active requirement? What does it look like to be violent in this spiritual sense?
You have to connect the imagery. The threshing sledge, a tool requiring determined effort to crush resistance, is the necessary metaphor for this kingdom violence. The source material reveals that the transition from maggot to crusher requires courage, determination, and a willingness to listen deeply to God's voice.
So we can't wait for transformation to just happen to us. We were promised the tool of power, but we're required to apply the force to use it. Spiritual courage is what activates the sledge.
That's the application. The requirement isn't to sit back and wait passively. The force is responding to challenges with faith and boldness. That's the appropriate engagement. By doing that, you're able to take your place in God's unfolding work of salvation.
So how does this translate to a concrete action? What's the practical challenge for the listener right now?
Yeah, the deep dive has to circle back to immediate relevance. And the source material asks a direct, actionable question that moves the idea of force from abstract theology to personal determination. What act of spiritual courage can I do today to show that I'm listening and responding to your call?
That requires identifying your mountain, whatever it is, and taking the sledge to it. It could be confronting an internal fear, making a difficult change, choosing forgiveness over bitterness. It's an active choice to use the power you've been promised.
And it moves the concept of kingdom force from aggression against others to determination within yourself. That internal struggle to align your will with the king's merciful character. That's the difference between destructive violence and spiritual courage.
This journey has been pretty intense. We started with the humility of being called a worm. We're tasked with the staggering mandate of crushing mountains and had to grapple with why the greatest prophet ever is still considered less than the least person inside the kingdom.
And the central conflict, which is the knowledge you really must explore further, is found in reconciling these two great truths. Yet the king's fundamental character is defined by mercy, graciousness, and slowness to anger, as we saw in Psalm 145. What does it truly mean that his kingdom suffers violence? And how do you, as the listener, determine which acts of force or boldness constitute true spiritual courage, the threshing sledge in action, as opposed to just mere human aggression? That exploration is the profound demand these sources leave us with.
A profound challenge to take with you as you face your mountains. Thank you for diving deep with us today.